And then I made an alcohol slide. So y'all can see like how crazily terrible alcohol is to your motor skills. Like you can't even like see where like this is barely, like my face must be scrunched up. Looks like I have like rabbit bunny ears. It looks like it says like raw deal or how. Like I don't know. I've gotten better at it over time. But still, alcohol is like one of the most powerful types of drugs there is for like messing with your motor skill. And then more recently, I've done experiments where I was deaf. I went a whole summer being tortured every Monday by my friends. This is my head being dunked in the bucket of water like you see in the movies. And this is, look at this picture and look at this. Oops, I went backwards. Look at this. This is what the alcohol, it's like being, having your head like dunked, like the similarities of that. When I was putting these slides together, I was like, holy shit, getting really bummed. And then I was blind for 30 days. And then, let's see what it is on the time. Okay, perfect. And now I wanted to show you, I have like tons and tons of different artists that I feel like influenced by. And so I made a couple different slides so I could show you like some of the different artists that I really feel connected to. The French Impressionists, I already talked about them, mentioned them a bunch. I really love how they painted the same exact thing, but under different conditions or different perspectives. And I just recently, like within the last couple of years, found out about this. The Stanislaw Ignacy Wickiewicz portrait painting firm. All these pictures were made in 1930. His name for short, he had a nickname, was Wittkesy. It's a lot easier to pronounce. It's kind of hard to see, but he has like this code on the bottom of the picture and stuff. But this painting firm, he made up his own rules. And I've been an artist for quite a while now and still had no idea that I could make up my own rules. And so I brought some of these rules to share with you. When someone wanted a portrait, him to paint their portrait, they would have to sign and like agree to these conditions. One of them is the customer must be satisfied, which means no matter what. They have to be satisfied like with what he did. Misunderstandings are ruled out. There's not going to be any misunderstandings at all. And if you read the actual like contract, it says so there will not be repeating things over and over again. The customer isn't allowed to criticize the work. If the customer rejects the portrait, they must pay 1/3 the price and the firm keeps the painting. The customer doesn't have the right to demand the portrait to be destroyed. Women with bare necks and shoulders cost 1/3 more. Each arm adds 1/3 to the price, the total price. So he just had like all these rules and people agreed to it. And I thought, well, I'm going to do this too. And like maybe about 3 weeks ago, I changed them around a bit to make them apply to me because whenever people want to buy a picture from me, they'll want me to be on drugs or something. And so that's like one of my rules is the customer shall not expect me to be on drugs when I make this picture, but I've kept them kind of similar. And then right away, boom, got four people just agreed to those rules right away. It like really shocked me. I thought, well, who can demand such a thing? Like it would never even have crossed my mind that I could just make up these kind of rules that people would just follow, but this is how it happened. Now here with this code, he kept a code of everything he was on while he was painting these people's portraits for the painting firm. Merck is the company that made mescaline. C was alcohol. He was a Polish artist, and I'm not sure what the Polish word is for alcohol, but C was alcohol, most usually vodka, and CO was cocaine. So he painted this picture on mescaline, vodka, and cocaine. This one, P is smoking. But NP means not smoking. The number 3 denotes how many days he was not smoking. So this is smoking after 3 days not smoking plus vodka and peyote. So every portrait he did like this was there. Louis Wayne, I really love this guy. He was a greeting card artist, made cats. They always use him in psychology books to show you like the descent into madness, the descent into psychosis. But for their album cover, yeah. But none of these cat pictures were dated. And what happened was in the late 50s, early 60s, a psychiatrist just arranged these pictures and like, look how perfect this madness is. But really, in real life, illness is not linear like that. But that's how they tried to make sense of it, like organize it. And then Andy Wilf, he's in a lot of the psychology books, Intro to Psychology, to show you like he kept getting more and more increasingly abusing drugs and alcohol and died early. And then last year was the first year I was ever in a psychology book. That was, all of this is like one thread. I kind of feel like an art history Twizzler. I feel like there's 3 different like conceptual thoughts that wind together to make me who I am. And this type of repetition, like pattern and difference, is one of those threads. The second one is the everyday. And this guy, Roman Opalka, he had these huge canvases, and he started from 1 to infinity in 1965, and he would dip his brush in the white paint, and he would paint like 1, 2, 3, 4, until the paint was off the brush. Then he would redip it again. And then once he finished the whole entire canvas, then the next canvas would be 1 degree lighter shade. So eventually when it goes to infinity, it's like white on white running out. And after every day painting, he took a photograph of himself. And so he died in 2011, but he had like photograph of himself every day. Another one was Jonathan Borofsky, like a year later. He started counting from 1 to infinity 2 and was just like putting it on these papers. But then over time, he started like doodling on the papers and writing his dreams on the papers. And then he, like, if he dreamed about a sculpture, he'd like started making the sculpture, but then whatever number he was on, he would put this on the artwork. But then when I was making these slides, in the mid-90s, he just stopped. I was like, get the hell out of here. How are you going to do this for decades and then just stop numbering? Like, I was totally shocked. I don't know why. I couldn't find out, but I just could not believe that he stopped numbering, stopped counting. Peter Dreer, Day by Day, Good Day, he paints the same glass of water glass with no water in it. Not every day, but over and over again in the same place in his studio. And he has a template, so it's like actual size, like life size. And I think he does like maybe 200 a year, something like this. And some of them are at night, and some of them are in the day. I think they said he's done 2,500 in the day and over 2,500 at night. When you first walk into the gallery, the museum, they all look the same. But then once you really look, you can see like, oh, like the reflection of the window, like the curtains are down, or the curtains are up, or the window's blurry, or the window's like super clear. There's like phenomenological differences between each one. And that really speaks to me, really speaks to me. On Kawara, he paints the date. And I think he has like almost like not a ritual, but a routine where it takes like 6 to 8 hours to paint every date on there. It's like by hand perfectly. And then sometimes when he exhibits them, he exhibits the newspaper from that day. And then Morgan O'Hara, she is like the king of life logging. Time studies for over 40 years. She's charted, she's figured out a way to chart and graph, account for every minute of her day. She can account for every minute of her day. And you can see there's like sleep, this much time is dedicated to sleep and stuff. And by making it like this abstract type of pattern, she's better able to like observe her life and spend time more on things. It's really incredible. She's like dedicated her entire life to the practice of paying attention. It's like unbelievable. She's also done another body of work that I don't have a slide for, called live transmissions, and she travels around the world and watches people doing things. Like she might watch a soccer player, she might watch like a noodle maker in Japan, and she draws with both hands, and she just stares at the person's motion, and she transmits their body's motion through her eyes, through her nervous system, through her hands, and she's cataloging almost the encyclopedia of human movement. It's really incredible. And so that's one of the other, like, this everyday or daily type of things is really influential to me. The third, this is for the third kind of like conceptual thread of how I feel attached to art history or something. Carolee Schneemann. Early on, she was like reacting against abstract expressionism, and she wanted to go off the canvas into 3 dimensions. And what she did was she created these like assemblages or environments or something, constructions in her studio, and then using found objects and paint on herself and on this environment, she started merging her real life experience with her imagination for the camera. And she did 36 of these types of actions. And she really was like really trying to find a way to come out into the canvas, out of the canvas into the 3-dimensional world, using her body as the primary source of art material, like this real art material. And a couple of years later, Günter Bruce, one of the Vienna actionists, he also was using his body as the primary source of the art material. And you can see he's like pouring paint on himself, and he's like crawling into and out of this canvas and stuff, just trying to say, hey, like my body is the art materials. And then again, Carolee Schneemann, up to and including her limits, she was attached to this tree surgeon's harness, and then using automatic drawing for an extended period of time, started mapping time and mapping her body's energy in motion in this thing, in this space. And then Matthew Barney does something really similar now, drawing restraint. He has a whole series where he sets up like these different like limitations and then still tries to keep making marks. And Matthew Barney, he comes from like a sports athlete, like a football background. And so for him, resistance is what he uses as a metaphor for growth. So like where you lift weights, the weights are putting like resistance on your muscles, but you keep doing it and then that's how your muscles grow. Well, he does that like, he's trying to do that with art, like the same type of thing. And then this, I guess they called it body art, endurance art, and I'm a real big fan of Chris Burden and Marina Abramovich. There's a real great documentary, it came out maybe a year ago, called Burden, and I recommend everyone see it. It's like really, really incredible. He spent 22 days in this bed, in this gallery, not eating or drinking or anything, and another time he spent 22 days hidden up in this platform back there, and he hoped that people could come into the gallery and just sense that there was some presence, something wrong. Marina, freeing the voice, she just screamed over and over until her voice was gone. And to watch that video, it's just like, whoa. And I'm nude with skeleton. It's like 24 hours almost laying underneath this skeleton, and all she's just breathing, and then it looks like the skeleton is breathing. It's like so incredibly powerful. John Duncan is like a really big influence on me. In 1976, he was mugged at gunpoint in LA, and he like gave over his money, and then they hit him in the head with the pistol, and he saw like a flash of light. It was like knocked down. He thought he'd been shot. And then when he came to and he realized that he wasn't shot, he had a whole new lease on life. And so then he went to the Halloween store and he bought like this mask and got into this outfit, and then he went to his friend's house in the middle of the night and woke him up. He only picked friends that he thought would appreciate it as art, and like woke him up at like 3 in the morning, and when they answered the door, he fired a blank into their face and then took off running because he wanted them to have a whole new lease on life too. He did another performance called Every Woman in 1979, and he dressed up like a woman and walked around LA really late wanting to experience the threat of sexual assault that women go through every day then. And the Paul McCarthy, the famous performance artist, was kind of like stalking him, like filming it and stuff. For women only, he invited an audience of only women to come, and then he showed them like this most terrible pornographic films to women, and then afterwards he invited them to come into the back room one at a time and abuse him sexually. And he said the women really would just come and like touch him like really nicely and stuff like that. But to me, he's really, really one of the, to me, he's like a shaman for the Western world. If we were like in a different culture, he would be living like on the outside of town and you could go to him for advice and stuff. He's like this type of person. He's like really, really special. I'll skip this one. Now, to Ching Sheh, when he started doing performance, they used to call this type of thing endurance art. But then once he started, they had to change and create a whole new genre just for him called Durational art. And what he did, the very first one, in 1978, he built a jail cell in his apartment. He had no TV, no radio, no books, no paper, no pens, nothing. And was locked in here for 1 year, and he paid a woman to come every day and like empty his toilet bucket and give him food, and he took pictures, not every day, but he took a lot of pictures so you can see him change over time. The second year, time clock piece. This is the only record of mankind that's photographically kept hourly. He never slept more than 50 minutes this year. And he had a time clock, and every hour on the hour he punched this time clock. And there was like little footprints right next to it so he knew where to stand. And there's a video of this, which like a slideshow of the still images, and you can see his like psychology is just like coming out and stuff. It's like really, really incredible. Then he lived outside for a year, never went indoors. Then this is what he's most famous for. Linda Montano, the famous performance artist, they were tied together for 1 year with this rope, and then every conversation they had together was documented on cassette tape, but nobody's allowed to listen to these tapes, not even if you're like a PhD or something. You cannot listen to these tapes. And I believe the reason why is because they cussed each other and argued a whole lot. Because they say that they got to where they could communicate just by the way they were jerking the rope. And they weren't allowed to touch each other at all, but they had totally different ideas about what art was. They didn't agree on that. They had like came from totally different cultures and stuff. And so I believe that that's why they don't want people to hear the tape, because maybe it's not so nice or something, being tied to someone for a year. And then last, Linda Montano, 7 years of living art. She dedicated each year to a chakra, and each chakra had a color, and then there was like a tone that would go with each sound. And so like 1 year, she had like a yellow outfit for that chakra. She always wore those clothes. She had a whole room painted that color, wore those clothes, and then every day for hours, every day she listened to that tone. She since did 14 years of living art, added more to it. And I saw online where she was asking for volunteers to help her. Now she's going into 21 years of living art performance. She's got a really big, I saw advertisement for a big, huge exhibit coming up. And that's the end of it.
Open it up to Q&A.
I have a question for our professor.
Oh, wait, I got you a microphone. Oh, I was sitting on it.
It's just why didn't you guys tell us that we could just go to the doctor and say it's for an art project? That's all we had to do?
Are there any psychology faculty?
We never said you couldn't.
That's good point.
you want me to put up the other slides in case you...
Maybe if someone has some other questions, maybe, like change the tab.
I'm stuck. All right, who else has some questions? Yeah. They need to record it.
Have you ever thought about donating all of your work after you pass?
No. No. Like, well, when I was living in this one building, the one where I was on the ledge on the 11 stories, it was like such a terribly, like, destitute poverty place. I thought when I die they're just gonna throw them in the dumpster, but I have them all like scanned in. There was a lady, Phyllis Kind. She had an incredible art gallery. I think the gallery might still exist, the Phyllis Kind Gallery. And I said to her, I was living in a trailer and I was afraid, like, what if it burns or something, or there's a fire, or there was a hole in the bathroom, and I was just afraid, like, what if like there's an infestation or something and my books all get ruined. So I sent her letters like, please, will you take these books and just do something, because I don't want them to get ruined. And she sent me like a really incredibly nice letter back, but she didn't want nothing to do with it. But I don't know what will happen to it. My girlfriend says she will get them really fast and like put them somewhere safe and stuff, but I really don't know. I just don't know what will become of it, really.